So today's going to be kind of more of like a continuation of the video me and TJ did. Damn it.
It's
So
2 letters, bro. Nah.
I'm gonna have to say Thunder God. I'm gonna have to restart.
This is crazy.
Today's going to be kind of a continuation of the last video me and Thunder God did, which was how the Akatsuki do against the 5 Kage Gauntlets. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how the Hokage do in an Akatsuki Gauntlet, because as like with the last video, these two groups have a very long history between each other, so it's kind of interesting to pin the two groups against each other in like a gauntlet style. So like for example, like Kakashi and Naruto have fought or interacted with almost every Akatsuki member. We had Hiruzen go against an ex-Akatsuki member and Orochimaru. We had Tsunade have to deal with the Akatsuki's offensive in the Land of Fire, so on and so forth. So we've got a lot of interesting fights here. In terms of how the gauntlet's going to work, I'm actually going to be tweaking it a little bit. So instead of the previously I'd done you need a 40% chance of winning to move on to the next round, we're upping that to 45% just to make it a little closer. So basically any fight that we see that's like really close, we're just going to advance the fighter just to be generous to them, because the gauntlet is pretty difficult for most of these Hokage. As usual, when we're talking about the Hokage, I don't do all of the Hokage forms because I like to keep it in Naruto power scaling, because Boruto is like its whole different thing. So we're going to be using old Hiruzen, and then we're going to be using Warrior Kakashi, and we're going to be using various different forms of Naruto based on basically what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be using the most powerful version of Naruto needed to pass the round. So Naruto is going to be changing form almost every round. But otherwise, the other Hokage are just in their standard, like, strongest form as Hokage.
Yeah, so Tsunade starting off, her first opponent is Hidan. Now, she's going to obliterate Hidan. Honestly, she's just going to one-shot him and blow his body apart, just like she did against, like, Edo Madara. And even though that was a clone, that is realistically what's going to happen. Hidan's just way too slow for her at this point in the series. And, you know, it's just like it's a trend for Hidan to lose every fight in these versus matchups. But it's like he's just the weakest. She really shouldn't have too much problem with him just like knocking his head off with like one punch. That's a common tactic even the Jinchuriki use. So, yeah, Hidan gets cleared pretty low diff. Next up, we have Kakuzu. Now, I think Kakuzu versus Tsunade is very interesting because I definitely see this being one of those battles of attrition on both sides. From a strength standpoint, she does showcase better feats than his diamond hardening. Cracking Madara Susano. And you know, while Kakuzu's like strength feats, he's like catching the two tails, he's performing all this stuff. While they are impressive, they're nowhere near on that level, and you would know, like, you realistically can't get them that high in terms of like how potent or how hard he can hit. We even see like micro interactions with him trying to hit Shikamaru with his diamond hardening like earth style punch. Shikamaru evades it, he's fine after the fact. So that the diamond hardening really is Kakuzu's like one of his saving graces. Because I will admit, like, I think it's a little debatable. I definitely lean towards Tsunade in this case, but if she does overcome that, I don't see anything in his arsenal really being able to take her down with her continuous mitotic regeneration. If she's able to withstand 5 of Madara's wood clone Susanos, like gouging her with their swords, and she's like slamming them down and whatnot, I definitely don't see Kakuzu's hearts being nearly on that level. Yes, their jutsu are very potent as they stack nature releases together, but it really shouldn't be beyond what she can regenerate. Like, this also isn't talking about how she could summon Katsuyu to like aid her. And you know, Katsuyu is like her own topic. Her acid venom was like it was implied to be threatening to Orochimaru, so that's kind of crazy. To think about, you know, all that crazy stuff. There maybe is a case if Kakuzu does combine his hearts and starts like stacking nature releases. As the way like he more so fights with his hearts out. It'll be like omnidirectional in the sense that he'll have a heart all over him. He can shoot these like large scale attacks. But again, you know, we do have some like, you know, if base Naruto with like kind of these safeguards able to perform well, I could definitely see Tsunade performing well, just generally speaking, especially considering her lore and her performance against Madara. I will grant you, I do think there is some debate to be had with Kakuzu versus Tsunade. I definitely think it's a nutrition-based fight, but she'll just be able to continuously regenerate, and if she's able to one-shot him with his diamond hardening, she'll just be able to continuously one-shot his other hearts. She have no issue with one-shotting any of them, and she should be fast enough to also tag him at this point. So she should clear Kakuzu. I would say like actually like mid to high diff. I think it's more difficult fight than some people might say. Next up, we have Sasori. Now, I actually think this is where Tsunade cliffs out, just because she doesn't have too much of an answer for his poison. That should be very blatant. If she gets tagged even minorly, it's gonna be disastrous for her. We even see this with like a mini me of Tsunade with like Sakura. And that like the way Tsunade fights is so up close and brawl, and that she's just gonna be regenerating any damage like that she takes. At some point, Sasori with his insane, like maybe you think like the Kazekage stuff, how fast his sand is. It's going to be very relevant in this discussion. She's going to get tagged at some point. And something that's interesting is that I will admit, Sasori's puppets have very little durability, so she'll be able to smash them with relative ease. That is something. His Iron Sand less so. It's a little more debatable if she'd be able to break through it. I don't think so. But the thing about Sasori himself, right? Sasori himself almost has like a way to kind of counter conventional raw force. We kind of see when like Sakura punches him with her like chakra enhanced fist, he's able to like dissipate his body and then form up again. So it's like he almost has a way to like neg like attacks that would like or raw force attacks that would like destroy him completely, which is kind of crazy that he performs this feat. So just via the nature of his arsenal though, Tsunade is going to struggle greatly with this type of fighter. And while we can like maybe argue like she would just go start smashing Sasori, at some level Sakura is going to get poisoned during the fight, especially if someone like Chio's caliber, very comparable, even in the War Arc, is getting poisoned. Sakura is getting poisoned. They're getting poisoned multiple times throughout the fight. Tsunade really shouldn't be that high of a tier above him to where like she just is like not good. She's gonna be weaving him out and not getting poisoned at all. She's not that fast as a fighter. She's more like a bruiser. So I think Tsunade kind of clips out at Sasori.
And then next we have Hiruzen, and of course he's starting with Hidan, and it should be no surprise that Hiruzen's not going to struggle that much here. The only way he's really going to struggle is, I guess, finding a way to like, destroy Hidan, because if Hidan, like, for Hidan, like, he wasn't even able to scratch Kakashi with just a kunai and their, like, brief interactions. So if Hiruzen goes in with, like, the monkey stick, there's no way, like, Hidan's just going to get disarmed, like, immediately. And then from that point, Hidan doesn't really have a win condition in this fight. So it's kind of up to Hiruzen to figure out how to beat Hidan. Like, for example, he could use Hidan's own blade against him and, like, cut his head off. Another way is that he could just, I guess, kind of blow him up like Shikamaru did. And kind of comparing, like, the scale to Hiruzen's, like, elemental jutsu that we were able to see in the War Arc when he went off against when he went off against Guru should probably be enough to just like obliterate Hidan. If not, like I said earlier, he can use his blade. So very simple fight there. Now, as for Kakuzu, there's a lot going on in this fight because both fighters have pretty diverse arsenals. Now, for Kakuzu, his typical like elemental advantage that's very important when he's fighting is taken away here because Hiruzen is also kind of that rare type of fighter that also possesses all 5 basic nature transformations. And when it comes to like the scale, we saw that Kakuzu's Wensai was able to significantly damage Kakashi with just one hit at like point blank range. But on the other hand, we see that, like I said earlier, Hiruzen was going and fighting Guru's Buddha statue, which was threatening, the remnants of the allied shinobi forces. And in terms of just kind of looking at like the size and the scale, Hiruzen is much more impressive in that area. So I don't think that his masks are going to be like all that impressive here, especially when it comes to just like elemental affinities. At a certain point, when Kakuzu starts losing mask, as we saw in his final fight, he brings them into him and kind of goes into like a defensive form. So like originally he brought his fire mask and his wind mask together, and then he started using Scorch Release by just combining fire and wind style, which is problematic, as we did see like for Kakashi. Once that happened, he wasn't able to contest Kakuzu when it comes to elemental jutsu. But for Hiruzen, he theoretically can do the same, as we did see. Like, he was able to use 4 Shadow Clones to use all 5 Chakra Natures at once. But it's a bit headcanon because, like, for example, when he was going off against Guru, he didn't even counter the elemental jutsu that Guru was using. So, like, he put fire against fire instead of water against fire, which was kind of dumb. And so I guess it might be a bit of a stretch to say that, well, if Hiruzen sees that Kakuzu is combining fire and wind style, would he naturally combine like water and earth style or something? I don't know. I still think that just in general, if we're talking about like long range jutsu, I think Hiruzen has got Kakuzu pretty hard here. And even worse, for Kakuzu, Hiruzen does possess lightning style. And he should be able to easily see that when Kakuzu puts his hands together into an Earth style sign, he'll be able to tell that he's using an Earth style to harden the skin, as Kakashi was able to note that. If Hiruzen starts hitting Kakuzu with lightning style, all that raw durability just kind of becomes irrelevant, because even we saw like Kakashi's Shidori was able to pierce right through Kakuzu's hardened skin. In general, any aspect except for endurance, we see that Hiruzen has like the advantage. And he also kind of has like even the speed advantage, because even though Naruto didn't really fight Kakuzu in a direct way, he was still able to like trick him and eventually like hit him with his Rasen Shuriken. So if Naruto can do that, then Hiruzen certainly can do something similar. So just in general, Hiruzen's got a pretty strong chance here. His only chance of losing is if he somehow runs out of gas. But moving on to Sasori, this one's even more interesting because there's, like I said, there's a lot going on in this fight too. And in terms of how Hiruzen does against the Iron Sand, I'm going to say he does okay. And the monkey stick becomes very important in this. So in the anime, we saw like the monkey stick could push back the Nine Tails from like a mile away, but that's just like silly filler stuff. In terms of the manga, we've seen like the monkey stick was able to do things like easily disarm Orochimaru's Kusanagi blade, or it was able to cut through the god tree, like a branch of the god tree, pretty well. Like even better than how Tobirama could cut through branches of the god tree. In this situation, we do know that the monkey stick was damaged, or not damaged, but it felt pain from Orochimaru's Kusanagi blade. So it's kind of concerning that if somehow, if the Iron Sand can pierce through the monkey stick and actually, because it is still King Enma in there, so presumably like he has blood that can be poisoned. So that's a bit of concern for Hiruzen. I'm not going to go too deep into that because we're just going to get into headcanon territory. But certainly I do think that if Sakura can kind of like punch around like the big blocks of iron sand, then Hiruzen can do the same with the monkey stick, albeit he probably might have less endurance and he's not going to be wanting to fight in that type of cell. It's still an option to deal with it. And then also when it comes to like speed, as TG had said, like we don't really know like the upper limits of Sasori's speed exactly. We just know that he's able to scratch Chiyo and Sakura several times in that fight. Now, Hiruzen should be on a whole different level than them when it comes to speed. I will say that if the fight drags on for a long time and Hiruzen starts getting tired, as we did see against his Orochimaru fight, he's at a great risk of it getting poisoned. So that's also kind of like a toss-up. In terms of anything else that doesn't have to do with the Iron Sand, I don't think Sasori does very well here because all of his other puppets are very vulnerable to Hiruzen's large-scale, like elemental jutsus. Like his area of effect jutsus are just going to tear up any like 100 puppets or any other type of puppet he tries to use, including himself. So in general, there's kind of like a lot of gray area in this, but one way to look at this is that if Sasori and Orochimaru are kind of rivals, which is how I've always viewed them, like Orochimaru was prepared to go to Tenchi Bridge and fight Sasori by himself, and they were partners for a while. So I do see them being very much on the same level, and we do know that Hiruzen is just a tier above like the Sannin. Like it's narratively implied, and he did kind of beat Orochimaru pretty easily after the summons were taken care of. So that's why I'm going to pass Hiruzen in this situation, even though there's a lot of gray area going on here. Now, as for Deidara, this one's a little bit more clear cut, but at the same time, this is kind of a case where both fighters have a lot of wing conditions. So the main one for Deidara is just getting like out of Hiruzen's attack range. There's no way that Deidara is really going to be able to contest Hiruzen on the ground if he couldn't contest Sasuke on the ground. So if he is able to get in the air, which is an if, Hiruzen doesn't have the best options in terms of fighting Deidara in the air. Like he does have long range elemental jutsu and things like that, which could be threatening maybe. And then he also has the monkey stick, but that doesn't seem to have the same range as like Sasuke's Chidori spear even. Now he could do something crazy like try to use the monkey stick like a pogo stick and like jump off it like Sasuke jumped off his like Sasuke jumped off his sword. But there's some goofy stuff that Hiruzen can do, I guess. And kind of like I said, if Hiruzen is above like this kind of Sannin levels fighters, which like Sasori and Deidara are, he certainly generally should be stronger than Deidara. Deidara just has a good matchup against him because he gets into the air. Now, one thing I do want to bring up is Hiruzen's lightning style with Deidara's explosives. So usually when people talk about Deidara, if he's going against like someone that can use lightning style, they just instantly believe that like all his explosives are nagged, which is not really the case. We saw that Sasuke was actually having to like test a hypothesis and read his signs that he was
Yeah.
using Earth style. So, like for example, he had to see that some of the explosives that Datara used that were hit by Sasuke's lightning style, Sasuke had to note that those explosives did not explode. It's not going to be like an easy read. Hiruzen is smart, but it's not going to be some easy read, like instant read, where he's just going to start using lightning style. So things like C2 are dangerous because, as we saw, that was able to greatly damage heavy Sasuke in version 2 Curse Mark. And even C3 is also very dangerous if he doesn't figure out lightning style by then. Or even like the nano explosives, since, you know, Hiruzen's not a sensory type and he doesn't have a way to like electrocute himself like Sasuke can. In general, like I said, Hiruzen is generally like stronger. Like if you look at like just base stats, Hiruzen is stronger. He has stronger narratives, and he does a lot better against Data on the ground. But once Data gets in the air, it's kind of like his world. So it just depends on kind of how the fight goes. Can Data stay in the air for long enough? It's a toss up enough that we think that Hiruzen definitely can clear the 45 win percentage threshold. Going on to Kisame though.
I'll start off by saying, like, a lot of people are probably gonna jump on this with Kisame being like, man, that Jiraiya dude, man, he would have folded us in the meanest second. Like, so people like try and like paint this narrative of Kisame. His feats are very impressive. So the reason Kisame versus Hiruzen is a bit of a toss up, in my opinion, at least, is due to how like Hiruzen's old age at this point is such a factor for him. He's not even able like really to create shadow clones confidently, as dispersing his chakra up that much would just be that bad for him. And when you kind of compare this with like someone like Kisame, who's like known for absorbing chakra, whether that be Osame Hada or his respective techniques, it really gets kind of crazy, because then you can kind of look at, okay, you know, Kisame is a very momentum-based fighter, right? I'm like, okay, if he starts to gain momentum against Hiruzen, what's going to happen? You know what I'm saying? Because Hiruzen is kind of like, off like the start, he does seem a bit more impressive than Kisame. But as the fight drags on, there's obviously going to be that disparity. If Hiruzen goes close for taijutsu, he can get all of his chakra shaved off, or large portions of amounts of it taken off. Even like large scale attacks like his dragon flame bomb are nothing to the water shark bomb. So there is a lot to this. This also doesn't help the fact that like Kisame can also just flood the battlefield and just turn the environment into his advantage. So let's say he like starts up the giant water shockwave, floods the battlefield. Like if Hiruzen gets caught in that loop, it's over, you know. So I definitely think like Hiruzen starts off the fight generally, you know, because he is a little bit of a higher tiering on the edge compared to Kisame. But as like as Kisame does, like he's not so far off of Hiruzen that he can't gain momentum and bring it back. And a lot of Hiruzen's jutsu might not be the most detrimental to him. But yeah, so there is options, but I do think this is a semi-debatable topic just due to like how these two fighters operate. And how I don't think Kisame is that far off of Hiruzen. Just like I don't think he's that far off from like Killer Bee. So next up, we have Tobirama. You know, everyone, the most safe character to talk about always. So I'll start off by saying Hidan non-factor. Even by like part 1 standards, that Edo Tensei version of Tobirama would absolutely obliterate Hidan, even with his general stats. So now, full power Tobirama destroys Hidan, speed, whatever. He's gonna like water style severing wave his head off, no question. Next fight. Next up we have Kakuzu. Now Kakuzu's a little interesting because a common thing you'll hear when talking about Tobirama is like, okay, you know, he doesn't have many like potency showings with his jutsu, like his water style respectively. It's a little unclear. I'll say this: his water style is a tier above Kisame's. Also, like I'll say this: like Kisame creating a tsunami is like a feat for him. That's like very low diff for like someone of Tobirama's caliber. There's a lot of statements that also support that. So he definitely has a definitive speed advantage on Kakuzu. All his showings do indicate that as much. So moving around isn't going to be too much of an issue. He also does have tandem paper bombs. Now, a lot of people like will try and give Tobirama tandem paper bombs, like he'll just teleport out. I don't think that's the case. I literally just think he summons it at Tensei and blows them up. Which if he does, the battlefield's nuked. It's over. Like this fight is over. No one is tanking this. on the field, but he generally does have a speed advantage. So even if you were to say necessarily that maybe, he's not able to deal with Kakuzu and like his water style isn't for whatever reason potent enough to break through his diamond hardening, he does have options to get away from it. Along with just he should be able to take down Kakuzu's hearts pretty. Like if he's not able to break the diamond hardening, his water style should be able to break Kakuzu's hearts, which would just like lead him to get more momentum over time. So he does have options in this case. He has quite a bit. He also has Shadow Clone, so he can like incorporate some strategies very similar to how Naruto did. He can also teleport his clones, maybe have them blow up. There's a whole bunch of strategies he can employ. So I definitely see him making it past Kakuzu in this case. Next up, we have Sasori. It's honestly a lot of the same. Sasori really isn't going to be able to tag Tobirama at this point. Tobirama is going to be able to dash around. Sasori's puppets really don't have enough durability to where like they'd be able to tank any of Tobirama's attacks. Water style is going to be very strong in this case. Battlefield Flood, Severing Wave, all his great stuff. It's honestly a lot of the same. Sasori's durability is not the best, and if he can't really tag his opponent, he can't really incorporate like his instant kill win in this position. So even like Tobirama's jutsu potency doesn't really matter in this case. And even by like Sasori's speed standards, the fact that an inferior Tobirama can keep pace with Hiruzen, who is above Rasa, kind of puts any end to the debate that Sasori or his attacks would be a bit faster than Tobirama at this case as well. So yeah, that there's not too much to say there. Tobirama should clear that pretty confidently. Next up, Datara. More of the same, surprisingly. He's honestly going to be able. Now Datara might be a little tricky because the thing is, Datara and Sasori, their hacks do work on Tobirama, and Datara could, like, if the fight lasted long enough. He definitely could employ C4 and have like the microscopic bombs go off. Now, if the fight gets that far, it might be debatable. Tobirama does have options again. In the air, it might be a little harder for him, but he can throw kunai and just teleport to them. Especially if, like, I'll say this, like, if Sasuke can maneuver kunai around Datara in the air, I definitely think Tobirama should be able to as well. And again, he can always create more water on the battlefield. So even if like landmines are placed or missiles are shot, he does have options. He can dive into the water. And he does main like a lot of water style, like in his actual fighting style. Not too many people bring this up just because he fights Jubito and like all ninjutsu was just useless against this dude. So there wasn't really a place for it in that discussion. So Datara is another one of them. If he does get to C4, there's no reason to suggest it wouldn't work on Tobirama. I don't think the fight would ever get to that point. As like, Sasuke was a hard counter to Datara, but they were a lot closer in strength. Whereas like Tobirama's more like on that EMS Sasuke level. Like he's more intimidating to like a much, much stronger Sasuke. So there really isn't too much on that front as well. Next up, we have Kisame. I think I'll go on record. I think Tobirama demolishes Kisame. I've never thought otherwise. I think he has better water style. I think he has better speed. He's the wrong type of opponent. He's laughing because we've debated this on his channel, so it's a funny joke between us. But yeah, I think this is a lot of the same. And water style isn't really a hindrance to Tobirama. Like it just aids him in his jutsu. So and the thing is, Tobirama's like Minato in that he's like the wrong type of fighter for Kisame because Kisame does have to like perceive and like catch and like react and absorb the jutsu of whoever he's fighting. So if they are like a pretty big definitive like tier above him or can like overwhelm him, he's not gonna be able to gain some momentum. Even like his water shark bomb, which is like you could argue maybe as fast as Gated Guy, and his Hirodora, nothing's realistically gonna be hitting Tobirama at this point. So I think he clears Kisame.
Let me jump in real quick since
jump in, bro. Hop in, bro. Hop in the mix.
I mean, I agree that in this type of video where you only need a 45% chance to win, I do think that Tobirama can clear Kisame, but it's very close. Now, as for Pain, I'm stopping him at Pain. Now, I've talked about this more extensively, but as for like this video, I don't think that the way that Tobirama uses Flying Raijin is as good as people often think. Or sorry, in this situation, it's Pain. Specifically, the Diva Pass abilities is very troubling with Almighty pushes and Universal pulls in the long haul. And I also do think that Tobirama has a problem. Like he doesn't have a way to get out of Planetary Devastation. But that's all I'm going to say about Tobirama. I'm going to let TJ explain his side of the argument.
a lot of people like will discuss Tobirama, and he is good at flying Raijin. He just doesn't dedicate like his fighting style to it, which is why like he's not as known for it. Like for example, like Minato has like taken these steps to like evolving the technique. He has pre-marked kunai, whereas like Tobirama has to like manually mark the kunai. You kind of see this with like the marks; they're in different locations. So and like it's the same mark that he places when he places on people. So he does have to like manually mark them. Which is, there is a bit of a distinction there. Now, I do think Tobirama versus Pain is a very interesting discussion just due to how Pain's just such like a monster against most people. We don't really see full power Pain. And he kind of makes a choke out of the Sanin in the series. I think it does like there is a degree of this where like does it depend on like how you interpret like Tobirama's speed at this point. Is he so fast that he's gonna just go around kunaiing all the paths of Pain? Which I actually think, again, like I wouldn't even make that argument, and that's my problem with like Minato versus Pain, and that being the Pains are very durable in their like their bodies, because it's like they're not actual like people, they're just like filled with Nagato's chakra. So there is a bit to be there. I personally, right, if I was going to talk about this topic like on my own video, I would probably lean towards like Tanda Paper Bombs being his best option against someone like Pain. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard for him to gain momentum against someone of Pain's caliber. A lot of his water style isn't going to be the most useful. Basic kunai might not be enough to actually like take down Pain at this point. He might be able to make some plays with Flying Raijin if he marks the paths of Pain, but it is a very like debatable fight, I will grant you. But I definitely think like if you were going to lean into it, Tanda Paper Bombs is probably the best option. If you don't think he can use that, I think this fight becomes a lot closer. But yeah, I personally just have Tobirama above Pain. Next up, we have Healthy Itachi. Now, I'm actually like we kind of talked about this. I'm stopping Tobirama here just because the Itachi when healthy should be very comparable to EMS Sasuke. And EMS Sasuke versus Tobirama is actually like the subject of a lot of debate. I do think there is a discussion to be had with this matchup with Tobirama like kind of chakra checking EMS Sasuke. And he kind of like puts some pressure on him with his chakra, intimidates him, kind of makes Suigetsu worried. Suigetsu like never really worrying about fighters. He's been around Orochimaru, he's been around the Raikage, but like when he senses like Tobirama and Hashirama, he's like, oh man, which makes sense. They're very strong. I just think this is such a diverse topic. And you kind of have to get into their matchups. Like Tobirama is like obviously known for fighting Uchiha, but there are techniques at Itachi's disposal that Tobirama has never dealt with. Tsukiyomi, the spirit weapons that and like Yadamir and Totsuka Blade that Itachi wield, his respective Genjutsu that should be a level above anything Tobirama has dealt with. Maybe barring Madara, but Tobirama places himself below Madara. So there is a lot to be had. And I think this topic is debatable enough to where like it could almost have its own video. So I think like stopping Tobirama here is like very fair. Next up, we have War Art Kakashi. I'll say this, this is a bit of an easier matchup to talk about because Kakashi actually has fought most of these people, which is this is Mr. Worldwide, bro. Everybody knows, man. He's him. So Hidan, weaker Kakashi is like very confident against Hidan. Easy decapitation, GG. Kakuzu, same thing, hard counter. Even if you were to say like Kakuzu did have an edge on Kakashi, which I do think there is a lot of merit to. This Kakashi has a couple more uses with his Mangekyo Sharingan that will be very detrimental to Kakuzu at this point, along with greater stats. So maybe Kakuzu's not going to be able to kick him out of Raikiri at this point. So, Kakashi's already shown effectiveness, even far weaker against Kakuzu. And while I do think like Kakuzu did have a pretty big edge in that fight, or Kakashi's just such a tier above that Kakuzu that there's no real discussion to be had. Sasori, same thing. There really is just that speed disparity. And the thing is too about Kakashi, when looking at like the Sharingan versus puppet users, not a lot of people bring this up, but the Sharingan should be able to see the chakra threads on the puppet, which basically makes it 10 times worse for Sasori. And Kakashi also should be able to cut the chakra threads with any of his like Raikiri, like maybe Zabuza's blade if you want to give him that. If not, basic kunai are cool too. Because he can amp, he can run them like Sasuke can run Chidori through his sword. He'll be able to cut the blades. If you need any evidence of that, Omoi without a chakra amp blade was able to cut Sasori's strings. So a chakra amp blade will definitely be able to do that. So Kakashi should have definitive advantage. You can honestly just Kamui Sasori's heart out at this point and end the fight right there, and he'll be able to sense it again with the Sharingan. So there's not too much there. Pretty definitive stat difference. Same thing with Deidara. This Kakashi's Sasuke on drugs. Literally, like he's just stronger, faster, better Sharingan at this point. They'll be able to replicate all the same strategies, if not 10 times worse against Datara. I'm kind of speed going through this, but Kakashi has fought Datara, and he did have a pretty decent performance at his weakest in Shippuden, which I do think should say something. Next up is Kisame. I think it's more of the same. Kisame, and then here's the thing about Kisame. Kisame's like got some good showings, especially against Might Guy. He's shown like kind of relativity without Samehada to, seventh gate guy. But, Kakashi's very comfortably able to combat us with like alongside sixth gate guy. So I don't think necessarily like seventh gate would be outside like his jurisdiction in terms of like what he's able to do, especially with this Mangekyo Sharingan respectively. So I think Kisame does struggle here. Again, there's a pretty distinct stat difference. I'm of the opinion like War Arc Kakashi and like, War Arc Minato, at least as an Edo Tensei, are rivals. They're able to fight alongside each other. The scene dictates it as much with them holding Shidori and Rasengan. Some people think he's stronger. Some people think he's weaker. That's just my opinion. Even if he's relative to that point, it would be far above like anybody up to Kisame. In which case, like he'd just be able to like really just speed blitz and just take them out. They wouldn't have too much opportunity to like employ the respective hacks or ability. Next up, we have Pain. Pain's interesting just due to how like even a weaker Kakashi was like somewhat threatening to Pain. Now, this isn't full power Pain, but and he does have to like kind of juggle like the Leaf Village at the same time. But he does kind of note like Kakashi does have a good arsenal of jutsu and he does move well. Now, I will say for some reason in the war, Kakashi's chakra reserves are like way higher. Like compared to the Pain fight, like Kakashi uses like a Shidori style substitution. He uses like one Shidori, and he's like, yeah, my chakra reserves are over half like gone. War, none of that. He's just continuously, and he does receive chakra from Kurama. He should be able to perform well against this Pain. There is a lot to this fight, for example, but like if he does like take care of Tendo immediately with Kamui, the rest are going to fall very quickly following. He does have that, and he didn't use Kamui against Pain. He just wasn't able to. He kind of chakra exhausted himself before he got to that point. So I think he still passed his Pain. This kind of like going along the logic of like Minato beating Pain, I kind of like fall alongside that conclusion as well. But I actually clipped Kakashi off at Healthy Itachi for the same reason for Tobirama, just because like there is a little bit of wiggle room there, especially with Itachi, with EMS Sasuke versus War Kakashi being a bit of a debate. And exactly like where Minato lies. I think there is a little bit of wiggle room right there. Itachi like having, his great showings, his distinct abilities, which we haven't seen Kakashi combat, like the Yadamir or the Susanoo respectively. So, I will say like even like prior to the war, like Sasuke Susanoo era was like a one-shot threatening technique to Kakashi. So, him coming up on this tier like is very relevant. So I generally stop him at Healthy Itachi. I think there are ways to say like he's above that. Like some people think he's like Kurama Minato level. I don't, but yeah, I think this is a very safe spot.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and say that I abstained from talking about Kakashi for this video because this is, as I guess anyone that watches the channels knows, I think that War Kakashi is a lot weaker than most, and I have my own video on that. If you want like an in-depth analysis, I'll put the link in the description. So I'm not gonna get into this because like this has happened many times, and like there's no progress being made in the discussions that I have over this. So I'm just gonna say that I don't think Kakashi goes as far. That's all I'm gonna say. And so next is Minato, and just starting with Hidan. Like I'll just get through this fast. Like if Minato is gonna be fast enough to deal with Hidan, he can use his own blade against him. He can summon Gamma Bunta to sit on Hidan. He can do whatever he wants against Hidan.
What we could do? That's a different one.
For Kakuzu, it's not. This one isn't as much as like a walk in the park as we did see. Like Kakuzu could survive a Rasen Shuriken briefly, and he didn't even have his ability to harden skin at that point. But as for Kakuzu's side, like he doesn't like any of his offense is just irrelevant here. Like any of the masks can be evaded like easily, considering that like Kakashi was able to fend against them like okay, and even when Kakashi got hit by one at point blank range, didn't really damage him that bad. Yeah, so in this situation, it's kind of like there's in terms of like the mass speed feats, like there's nothing suggesting they're on Minato's level. So if they're out of Kakuzu's body, they're very exposed and can just easily get speed blitzed by Minato. Now, if Kakuzu puts the mask inside of his body, that's a little bit better for the mask, but at the same time, the mask are still vulnerable as like their actual faces are to the sides of his head. So they should still be able to be hit by like a Rasengan or something, and I don't think that he can harden the mask skin. So they're still vulnerable in that setting, and as I said earlier, like any of Kakuzu's offense, it's just not going to work here. In terms of like the Rasengan versus like Kakuzu like hardening the skin, there's an argument to be made that Kakuzu's not even going to be able to like perceive like Minato coming after Adam. So like when Minato landed Rasengan on Obito, it was because Obito couldn't perceive what was going on and use Kamui. It's kind of the same situation here, especially since Kakuzu needs to weave one Earth-style sign to harden the skin. That diamond skin hardening is not that big of a factor in the end, and eventually like it's just kind of like a speed thing. And with enough Rasengans, Kakuzu should go down. As for Sasori, it's like the same thing. This is just a speed diff. And just kind of go more into Minato's speed as, you know, his speed feats are going to become more relative as we go up the tier list. I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. Like we did see in Edo, he was able to teleport in and out between Maduro's true-seeking orbs and 8 Gates Guy sprinting forward. Because that was when Lee threw his kunai at Maduro's true-seeking orbs, and he was able to perceive. His perception was so fast that he was able to feel the true-seeking orbs hit his back and then teleport out to get them out of the way. But he's fighting against two people that are just like way faster than anything Sasori has shown. So in general, like this is the same thing. Like there's no way, if Sasori can't hit Minato and he can't perceive his movement, there's no way for Sasori to live. So even if he slides out of like his Haruku puppet, or if his core slides out of his regular puppet body, like eventually Minato is going to catch on to like what the core is and then just hit his Rasengan with it. And it's the same case for Deidara, really. Minato can easily blitz him on the ground, or if he tries to like get into the air, he can easily blitz him before he gets into the air. If somehow Deidara gets into the air, like I don't know, if he started this fight in the air or something, he still has a lot of aerial options. Like he has Gamabunta. You know, if he wants to like get on Gamabunta and then just start throwing like kunai to teleport to Deidara, I don't think Deidara has a very good counter against that. So really, I don't want to get too into these like lesser fights. Now when it comes to Kisame, this one's a little bit more interesting, I guess. As we did see, when it comes to this speed matchup, we saw that once B got into version 2, Kisame could perceive what was going on and like brace for the attack, but he didn't. He ended up just kind of taking that hit, whereas earlier when B was in version 1, he decided to overpower B. Once B got to version 2, that kind of like showed that surpassed Kisame in physicality. So in this situation, Minato should be way faster than version 2B, as we do know that he's faster than the right Kage. So if Minato is coming at Kisame with that level of speed, it's kind of the same situation as version 2B, where he can't really like do anything but brace for impact. And he's not even going to be able to perceive Minato, most likely, especially if he goes in Flying Raijin level 2. Now, as for what Kisame can do on offense, all of that's going to be negated by Minato, because even if like he doesn't dodge it or just teleport away from it, he's able to teleport away ninjutsu or just long distance attacks. As we did see, he was able to set up a barrier that teleported away the Jubi bomb that was pointed at the Shinobi Alliance. So if he's able to teleport a Jubi bomb away to another kunai, he should be easily able to teleport any kind of a water style that comes his way. And he can even use this against Kisame, like if Kisame is standing near like some kunai and Minato teleports Kisame's attack to him, it's just going to end up hitting him. So if Kisame doesn't really have any offense here, he's reliant on his defense and I guess his endurance and just trying to like outlast Minato. But if he's not going to be able to get chalk from Minato to regenerate with, I don't think that he's going to end up just like taking all of Minato's hits and just waiting for Minato to tire out. And so just in this situation, if Minato keeps hitting him with Rasengans, which we saw was able to heavily damage Obito, if he's hitting Kisame with that, that's just going to eventually destroy Kisame. Because we did see that Kisame was able to survive like Hiradora, for example, but if Obito, who has very underrated durability, if Obito can't stand getting hit by one Rasengan, what is Kisame going to do with several? Now moving on to Pain. Of course, this is a much more contentious matchup because these two are much closer in like their general power levels. But in general, I think that Minato's abilities counters Pain's abilities hard, specifically the Diva Path. But as for the Lesser Pass, like we did see that Naruto was able to deal with a Lesser Pass with a lot of difficulty. Like it was taking him a lot to take them out. But in Minato's case, that's just going to be even better because he's stronger than Sage Mode Naruto. We know this narratively. And so, in terms of the weaker paths, they're just not very relevant. Like the animal path can be countered by Minato summons, as we saw that Naruto used the same summons to counter them. We saw the Asura path got blitzed by Naruto, so that's the same case here. The Preta path doesn't have anything to absorb from Minato, so he's just not relevant. So all these lesser paths are almost like sitting ducks. And then as for the Diva path, his almighty pushes and universal pulls are just fully countered by Minato teleporting. So Minato's never really going to feel the impact from either of these if he's able to teleport. And he's even able to teleport like long distances if need be. It's really kind of like Pain doesn't have that many like wing conditions. Not even like planetary devastation would work either because like I said, Minato is able to teleport like countries away. Like we saw that he was able to teleport back to the Leaf Village from the final front in the war arc. And it's kind of like at the same time, like if we saw that Minato, when he fought Obito, if like a younger Obito couldn't even perceive Minato's top speed, it's hard to justify that Pain could. Considering that really, we don't know the upper limits of Pain's like speed feats, but we did see that he was able to react to Six Tails Naruto. And that just doesn't compare to like what Minato is able to. So there's no win conditions for Pain, and Minato has like the better matchup. So I'm picking Minato pretty easily here, or not easily, but pretty certainly here. And then we get to Itachi versus Minato, which is probably one of the most contentious like subjects, fighting subjects in the Naruto community. I've done a video on this. We've also done a video on TG's channel about this. I do think that Minato's passes because there's a lot of gray area with the upper limits of what Itachi is able to do with almost all of his abilities. Because we haven't really seen Itachi honestly like lose a fight. To start off, we did see that Itachi could react to KCM1 Naruto. Like he was able to briefly scuffle with him, and he was able to later on carry him in that fight against Nagato. And we do know that like KCM1 Naruto is supposed to be kind of relative to like base Minato speed because they have like the same, like they react to the Raikage's top speed basically in the same way. We don't know the upper limits of Itachi's speed. We don't know exactly if he can react as, let's say, Flying Raijin level 2, but considering that Obito could not, it doesn't look very good for Itachi. And we did see that some of Kabuto's attack were able to at least push Itachi. They weren't faster than Itachi's perception or defenses, but they were able to at least make him strain to protect Sasuke, for example. So there's nothing really concrete supporting that Itachi could react to Flying Raijin level 2. So I consider that a wing addition for Minato. Now, Itachi does have the option to use the Susanoo Ribcage to protect himself if things start getting too fast for him and he starts feeling like concerned. Like when we saw when Sasuke was fighting the Raikage, at a certain point, he just put up his Susanoo Ribcage as just like a defense because he wasn't able, at a certain point, he wasn't able to keep up with the Raikage laterally. That's the option to counter version 2. So that's almost like a wing addition for Itachi. Now when it comes to Genjutsu, that's very questionable because we don't know the upper limits of Itachi's Genjutsu either. We do know that Kabuto took the precaution of covering his eyes against Itachi, and then once Kabuto was in Izanami, he was put under Tsukiyomi by Itachi, which kind of implies that someone of Kabuto's level was vulnerable to Tsukiyomi, conscious or not. There's a lot of gray area there if Minato gets put under Tsukiyomi. I'm going to say it's a weak wing condition for Itachi. And then in terms of like the Susanoo, we do know that it did hit Nagato from his blind spot twice in their fights. So if it's hitting Nagato with a little bit of like a setup, I would say that's very concerning for Minato, considering that Nagato is certainly on this tier of fighter. And then also we do see that Obito, who did fight Minato, kind of has a very good idea of how strong Hokage Minato was, waited until Itachi died to go after Konoha, and even said to himself that he was like glad that Itachi was out of the way. He seems very relative like to people like Nagato, Obito, KCM1, Naruto. So if he's relative to all those fighters, it seems very likely that he can put up a fight against Minato at least. And I would say that when it comes to this fight, it's kind of like Itachi has the less clear win conditions, but he has the better win conditions. They're just kind of, there's a lot of gray area. Whereas with Minato, his win conditions really beat him with speed and or outlast him. Because if Itachi is using his Susanoo Ribcage to protect himself, he's almost like on a short timer to win the fight. So it's a true toss-up. I think Minato passes if we're saying he needs a 45% chance to. On to Orange Mask Obito, which is going to be the last fighter in the gauntlet. Just to clarify, neither of these fighters are going to have any knowledge on each other. Like, all of these are random encounters with no prior knowledge to make like things fair. When it comes to Orange Mask Obito, we don't really know exactly how strong he is. We can assume, it would be natural to assume that he got stronger after the Nine Tails attack, but we don't really see him fight anyone significant while he's wearing the orange mask. We see him fight like Danzo's bodyguards and Conan, and in both of those fights he gets damaged because he was just being sloppy. So it's not a very good look for him. There's not much to like build off of from their original fight and saying that Obito is going to do much better. If he cannot perceive Flying Raijin level 2 like at all in their original fight, there's just not enough evidence saying that, you know, being older as Orange Mask Obito, like I can't say that Obito is going to be able to perceive it. And that's really what this fight comes down to, is literally just speed. Because both of them can counter each other's abilities. It's just if they can perceive those abilities happening, as we did see in the original fight. So based off the limited information we have against Orange Mask Obito, I think that I can say that Minato clears this. Now, Obito does have Izanagi, which he did use to backstab Conan, which is a threat here. And it is at least a threat so that he can like learn about Flying Raijin level 2. But in general, I think Minato can pass it. Now with Naruto, as I said at the beginning of the video, we're going to be progressing his like versions as we go up to make it more interesting. So starting with Hidan, we said that he needed to be in like his zombie duo arc or like his first Rasen Shuriken form to take this one. Because we didn't feel like in the first two arcs of like part 2, he's kind of unproven, like in exactly how strong he is against the Akatsuki, in my opinion, at least in base. And in terms of like this arc, this Naruto was able to take on Kakuzu with a little bit of help from Kakashi and Yamato. And we did see that Kakashi said that he had surpassed him after that fight. So if he had surpassed Kakashi at that point, and he has things as powerful as like Rasen Shuriken or something, that's going to be very problematic for Hidan because that can easily cut through Hidan. And then also Naruto's ability to use Shadow Clones is just terrible for Hidan because there's no way to get blood from a Shadow Clone. So in general, there's no really a win condition for Hidan, and then we also have Naruto just using Rasen Shuriken against him. On to Kakuzu. We did say that we thought that he needed Sage Mode to beat Kakuzu, as we literally did see this fight happen. And when Kakuzu was in his weakened forms, when like he had spent a bunch of chakra, he had lost 2 masks, he had lost his Earth-style mask, and he still ended up, his Rasen Shuriken ended up fizzling out on their first interaction, and Kakuzu was about to kill him before Naruto got saved. Just by telling by that, he has to upgrade to Sage Mode, and then by that point, that's going to be fine. Because literally in that situation, if he's in Sage Mode, he can just throw the Rasen Shuriken, and it's not going to fizzle out. And we never saw like a Rasen Shuriken fizzle out while he was in Sage. Now, there is a little bit more to elaborate on that fight, because in this scenario, Kakuzu is going to have all his masks, including his Earth-style mask. It is kind of probably going to go the same way, in that his Earth-style mask or his Diamond Hardening is not going to be that effective if he gets hit by a Rasen Shuriken by surprise. Because as we saw in the original fight, after the second attempt that Naruto did, he was able to surprise Kakuzu and hit him in the back with Rasen Shuriken. If that happens in this fight, and he hits him by surprise, he's not going to have the chance to harden the skin, because he needs to do the hand sign to do it. It really kind of just comes down to that. Like, the other masks are not going to be that relevant, if we're being honest. Like, if he can take on the other passive pain with difficulty, he can definitely take on the other mask if they're outside of Kakuzu's body. So it just ends up kind of being that same scenario where Kakuzu's in that defensive form and then Naruto ends up tricking him. As for Sasori, it's kind of the same deal where we do think he needs Sage Mode. So we did see that Sasori was able to poison Sakura and Chio easily, as we said earlier. We don't know the upper limits of like his jutsu speed, but Naruto should be way faster than them. And he also has danger sensing, so any type of blind spot or surprise attack is not going to work. Like, even if he tries to backstab him like he backstabs Sakura, that's not going to work if Naruto's in Sage Mode. Sasori is also kind of liable to being tricked. Like, Sakura was able to trick him and destroy the third Kazekage puppet. Naruto is also very similar, as we see him do plenty of outside-of-the-box tactics and fights, specifically against Pain, where like almost every path of Pain he did, there was some type of deception going on here. In terms of like the 100 puppets, that's going to be like, if he throws a Rasen Shuriken at that, that's just going to obliterate all of them. I do believe it's like a close fight, but there's just not like, when it comes to Sasori's speed, there's not enough evidence supporting that he's going to be able to hit Naruto and poison him. And then we do know that Naruto has some good matchups against him, specifically with like the Rasen Shuriken and things like that. So I do think that even if like Sasori's core like switches puppet bodies, I do think that eventually Naruto's going to be able to figure that out and hit the core, or even his Rasen Shuriken may be able to get past Sasori's defenses and hit him. Kind of a last note on that fight, Sage-Mode Naruto is narratively implied to have like surpassed Jiraiya in the Sannin at this point. And as I said earlier, I think that Orochimaru and Sasori are kind of like on a rival basis. It's kind of the same case for Deidara. We do think that he's going to need Sage Mode for it. If they both start on the ground, he's at a danger to be blitzed, considering that Sasuke could at least pressure Deidara significantly in that scenario. Now, if we see Sage Mode Naruto in that scenario, he should be way faster than Heavy Sasuke. Now, when it comes to if Deidara gets in the air, because there's a very valid chance it could happen, Naruto has like a lot of options in the air. Like he does have his toads, like I said earlier. Now, they are big targets, but they can easily set something up for Naruto, like since they're able to jump so high, and then Naruto can jump off of them. And it's kind of like the same thing with Sasori fight. Like if Sage Mode Naruto surpassed like Sannin level at this point, he's generally just stronger than Deidara, and Deidara doesn't have that good of like a matchup, or even a good matchup at all against him. It's close, but Naruto should definitely pass. Now, once we get to Kisame, we do think that he needs KCM 1 to be Kisame, because there is the argument that we've seen, like that Samihara is not going to be able to absorb the Senjutsu or Sage Mode Chakra out of Naruto. I don't believe that's the case, as we did see this when he was fighting against Pain. We saw that the Preta Path was able to grab Sage Mode Naruto and absorb his chakra enough that he got out of Sage Mode. The Preta Path did end up paying for that, because once Naruto tried to enter Sage Mode, because the Preta Path was absorbing his chakra, he ended up turning to stone because he couldn't handle the Senjutsu, or the nature energy. So the way I see it is that when Naruto is in Sage Mode, he's perfectly mixed this nature energy, and it's able to be absorbed. We saw that the Preta Path could absorb it. Now, if he's entering Sage Mode and he's bringing this nature energy into him, and it's not already mixed, then it can't be absorbed by like the Preta Path or Samihara. So in this situation, I do think that Samihara should be able to absorb Naruto's chakra with no problem. When it comes to like how they match up, like even like something like Super Water Shark Bomb could likely absorb like a Rasen Shuriken, since it was about to absorb Hiradora, if we're just looking at like perspective of size and scale. Now, once we start talking about KCM1, he's much faster. Like we saw, like I said before, Kisame was struggling against version 2B, and this is just like a much more complete version of the Tailed Beast mode. KCM1 Naruto should be way faster than B. We even saw KCM1 Naruto hit Kisame when he was in Samihara, when he was escaping from that room. Kisame is not really keeping up speed-wise in terms of like his defenses. Getting hit by a Rasen Shuriken is likely going to defeat him if it's not absorbed by Samihara, because we saw that Hiradora, he was able to survive it, but after that, he was basically cooked. So if we have a KCM1 Rasen Shuriken, Sage Mode Naruto's Rasen Shuriken at this point was able to like heavily damage the Nine Tails, for example. So it's hard to say that Kisame is going to be able to shrug that off at all. Now, he does have some ways to kind of like try to deal with the speed. Like he may try to flood the battlefield and go underwater and do something like that. But even like if we're looking at like his offense, he doesn't really have any type of offensive options that's going to be relevant. Like for example, if he tries to use Water Dome or something, maybe Naruto can outrun that jutsu. If he does get trapped in the Water Dome, he can disperse the water by using a Rasen Shuriken, like we've seen time and time again. Rasengans disperse water very well as part of the training even. And then just in general, like all of his water style is not really that relevant, except for like his Super Water Shark Bomb, because it could probably absorb a Rasen Shuriken. So I do think they both have like win conditions here, but Kisame is just like, it's just such a speed difference. It's hard to see him like kind of getting his offensive options off. And really his only option, in my opinion, is trying to use Super Water Shark Bomb. I think he can absorb some chakra from Naruto at certain points, but in general, KCM1 Naruto can pass. And then when he gets to Pain, I also think he only needs KCM1 Naruto, because we just see in Sage Mode, with a little bit of help and intel, he was able to take out the 5 weaker paths of Pain. Now, in this situation, I don't think any of the Pains will be able to keep up with them, because like I said earlier, the Diva Path ended up getting overpowered by Six Tails Naruto, and that's just like a weaker QB form. So if Naruto is able to resist any almighty pushes, then what's the Diva Path realistically going to do in that situation? And we even saw, like, when Nagato tried to universal pull a KCM1 Naruto in their fight, he was able to counter it. He didn't even need to overpower it. He was able to counter it by using his chakra arms. So in this situation, if all the lesser passive pain are just not protected, they're just going to be easily taken out, just like Sage Wind Naruto did with a lot of difficulty. He's going to have to use Planetary Devastation, but if he wants to use Planetary Devastation, he has to get close to Nagato in order to like activate it. When we saw when he ran away from Six Tails Naruto to do that, he only barely got away. Like the Six Tails Naruto was right on his tail, and KCM1 Naruto should be way faster than that. So there's no way that Pain can just outrun Naruto and get into a position where he can use Planetary Devastation. Basically, summing all that up, there's a speed difference here, and all of Pain's abilities just get shrugged off by Naruto almost. When it comes to Itachi, I don't think KCM1 is quite enough to get to that 45% win threshold. It's close, but I don't think it's quite enough. As I said earlier, we've seen them scuffle and fight together, and in the end, Itachi was hard carrying Naruto and B in that fight against Nagato. And then we saw that Itachi went on to go and beat Sage Mode Kabuto, who's on this same tier as these two, without using most of his hacks. Like, he couldn't use Amaterasu on Kabuto, and he couldn't even use Tsukiyomi until the end. He had to use Izanami to beat Kabuto, right? So he's severely limited in that fight, and he's still overcoming. And he did have the help from Sasuke, of course, but Sasuke even at times was being a liability as well. There were many times where Itachi had to like save Sasuke. That just kind of proves that Itachi is very much on this KCM1 Naruto level. Now on the other hand, after Naruto and Itachi team up, we only see KCM1 Naruto prove that he can beat like the third Hokage, and then he goes on and he kind of gets overwhelmed by the Jinchuriki despite B being there to help him. After Itachi carries him, we see that Itachi just performs better. And then as I said earlier with like the Minato versus Itachi stuff, it's very possible that Tsukiyomi works here, and having a tailed beast is going to help because of how Tsukiyomi is basically instantly defeats you. In general, like we see that Itachi is just far more impressive, and we've seen them fight together even, and Itachi did better. Now, if we upgrade Naruto to KCM2, especially like the upper levels of KCM2, there's no way Itachi wins here because despite all the hype that the Yada Mirror gets, I don't think it's blocking a tail beast bomb. Amaterasu won't matter in this situation either because it's just a chakra avatar and he can probably just purge his chakra away. Now, Tsukiyomi might be dangerous if he pulls out the Nine Tails and then the Nine Tails gets hit by Tsukiyomi. That is actually kind of dangerous. But I do think that if Naruto kind of gets to a point where he's just like, screw this, and he just like tries to nuke Itachi, there's nothing Itachi can do about that at all. And especially if we get to like the strongest versions of KCM2 where he's adding in Sage Mode, because we saw that version was able to keep up and react to Jubito. Like, there's just no way Itachi is going to be able to deal with that. And I don't think anyone's really going to find me on that. Since I've already upgraded to KCM2, that's more than enough for Orange Mask as well. Even if you think like the lower levels of KCM2 don't really work here because of Obito being able to negate all the like raw attack power that Naruto has, it doesn't matter because if we get to the upper levels of KCM2, like I said, he was reacting to Jubito and fighting Jubito and forcing Jubito to use like his true Sign Orbs to protect him. So if we get up to like that level, there's no way that Orange Mask Obito is winning here. Lastly, we have Hashirama. We're not talking about Hashirama because we can't downgrade his power levels. Hashirama is easily clearing through all these people. You have anything to say, TJ?
I'm very tired.
I'm very tired as well.
It's a very loaded video. So we had to kind of like spark notes it. I'm sure New Rise is probably gonna edit a bunch of stuff we said down to water it down. Just for the sake of like getting through it. God knows how long this recording is, but that's our general thoughts. Obviously, if a lot of these discussions can have dedicated videos to them. And we kind of alluded to that, so keep that in mind as well.
It's a very general video. It's a 45% chance to win condition. So just kind of like, don't be super anal about us. If we didn't talk about some type of detail or aspect of a fight, we didn't think it was relevant because we really did look at all these fights from all angles. So that's really all I have to say. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. Comment something if you have something to say. And thank y'all for watching. I guess I'll see y'all next time.